All right, so it's been a while, and the interface for Power Automate has changed quite a bit. So I thought I'd do a new video that covers you know what it looks like now. Just kind of do an overview of Power Automate and just with the new interface and all the various changes that have gone in there in the past year or so since I did the last video, talking about Power Automate and kind of doing an overview. So what I'm doing here, what we've got here is the homepage for Power Automate. You go to make.powerautomate.com to get there. Um, there are let's talk a little bit first about what Power Automate is. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Power Automate, it is a workflow automation tool. It is cloud-based. There is a kind of a partner version called Robotic Process Automation, or RPA. You can see a little note down here about it right now, but that's the RPA version is meant for desktop, and that's something that I will cover in another video in the near future, I hope. But Power Automate itself, the main version is cloud-based. It is a Microsoft tool for automating workflow processes. It's got, and we'll talk about connections here in a bit, but it's got connections to something like 1,400 different sources that you can interact with, get data from, pass data to, call in actions and activities in those processes. We'll get through some examples of some of that here in a little bit. But it's got all kinds of things that you can do with it to make your workflow processes easier. It is business focused. There are personal focused ones that are out there like Zapier and IFTTT. Which stands for if this then that, which are more consumer focused. Power Automate is definitely more business focused. You can use it for some personal stuff, but it's definitely business focused in nature. Um, so just kind of to walk you through the interface. So at the top here, you've got your connections here. You've got a search bar that you can look for things within the application. It lets you create various environments. If you have access to more than one environment, you can see here a button that'll let you do it. Click a drop down and to switch between the various environments if you have access to more than one. There's some settings here that you can go through and make some changes. They've got some themes you can change kind of the look and feel of it a little bit. But in general, there's not a whole lot to do over here. You can kind of see what your current license is. You can use Power Automate for free. It is somewhat limited. Um, but you can do a lot of basic stuff with the free version of Power Automate. But if you really want to get into the power, literally of Power Automate, then you need to subscribe. And the lowest tier is the premium version, which is $15 per user per month. There are a couple of additional add-ons. For instance, like to get access to the AI builder is an additional cost beyond that generally. Although the $15 per month does give you some AI builder access, but if you use AI builder a lot, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, you need to get even more for that. Um, so Power Automate is very heavily ingrained with the new Microsoft Copilot AI integration. So there's a lot of stuff here that'll let you use natural language to talk to the application and to interact with it and do various things with that. Um, for instance, if I want to say, create a flow that automates an approval process, something like that. You can do that. You can say I want to, and there's various suggestions that'll come up with here. But it'll let you do that, and it'll help you walk through the process of creating a flow that way. We'll do a couple examples of that maybe here in a little bit. But first, I want to just talk you through the various menus and features that are here. You can get really quick and easy access to the Microsoft Learn content for Power Automate here. Just go through the various training. Then, there's some more various things. There is a community forum where you can go and ask questions. I try to be active there. There are some video how-tos, the Microsoft Learn website documentation. If you want to suggest an idea, you can put in a feature request, and then like quick access to common issues, kind of like the little FAQ there. And then, of course, the latest news of what's new in Power Automate. Obviously, the newest thing is the AI prompts with Copilot and that. So just go down through here through the menu. Now you may or may not see all the things that are here. It just depends on what your license is and what you have access to. So obviously the home will bring you back to this page here. There's create, which will let you where you go if you want to create a new Power Automate flow. And there are various different types of flows. So let's kind of walk through those. So there's automated cloud flows. That means some event happens and your flow triggers. Maybe it's a new record in a database. Maybe a new customer gets added to Salesforce, or a new record gets added to your Oracle database, or a new file gets dropped in OneDrive or Dropbox or something like that. There are all kinds of different things that can trigger a flow to run. Instant cloud flows, that's if you want to run them manually by pressing a button. There is a Power Automate app for iOS and Android. You can also have access to them here in your cloud environment. But if you want to trigger a flow manually, then that's the way to go there. You create that. If you want a flow to run on a cloud schedule, so if I want a flow to run every minute, every day, every week, there are limits into how often you can do it. I mean, you cannot schedule something to run once a year. It has to be like monthly at least for scheduled cloud flows. Describe to design it. That's kind of like the Copilot integration. So basically, it's natural language text. You type in, say, hey, I want a flow to do X, Y, Z. And it will suggest, it may ask you some additional questions to help you clarify things, but it will suggest a flow that you can create that way. Desktop flow, that's the robotic process automation. So if you want to create a flow that runs on a local PC, the most common use case for that is, say you have an old VB6 app, and maybe you've got somebody who logs in once a day, does the exact same thing, clicks a few buttons, does a couple things in that application, and then they close the application, and they have to do that every day, or every hour, whatever it might be. RPA is a great way to automate those kinds of things. So if it's those repetitive desktop processes, especially for older applications that are not cloud-based, then you could set up a VM, you could set up your RPA on that VM and just install the app there, and then just have it automate that process of running that application. And that would save your worker a lot of time so that they don't have to do that. Process mining, that will kind of evaluate your existing processes and tasks, your existing flows, and make suggestions for improvements. We won't walk through that today. The templates button. So there are thousands of templates already out there. Things that people have already come up with. It may be a vendor came up with it, Microsoft came up with it. It may be a consumer suggested template. Whatever it might be, there are tons of templates out there already where maybe somebody has already come up with a flow that does what you want to do. So one of the best places to start with is to go to the templates and just search for things. So say I want to do something with Outlook. You would type in Outlook and hit enter, and it'll bring up all the templates that mention Outlook. So that, there are tons of templates out there, like I say, thousands of them. So if you look at each of the templates, you can tell, there's a description of what it is. These icons up here at the top will tell you which connectors are involved. So in this particular case, there's Outlook and OneDrive would be involved in this particular template. It will tell you who created the template. So this one's one from the community. For instance, this one here is one that Microsoft created. There might be vendor suggested ones. Actually, I think the vendor ones show up here as part of the community. So the type of flow is down here at the bottom left. So this one's automated. So some event happens and the flow runs. There's a scheduled one, somebody clicks a button and something happens. And then this button, or this number here at the bottom right, is the number of times that people have implemented. So you can tell the popularity of a particular template by the number of implementations that are down here at the bottom right. There are also categories here. There's top picks where they have suggested things. Let's clear my filter here. So you can see, these are some of the more common ones, or ones that have been suggested. If somebody shares a particular template with you, you can click there and see that. Then there are various categories here, for templates that are focused on various categories. And you can sort them by popularity, name, or how old it is. So you can see there's like 20 different categories here, almost 15 to 20 of various things where the templates have been broken up, and you can see specific things based on category. Learn takes you out to the Microsoft Learn website so that you can see the various things that the training and tutorials that are out there. There's some great tutorials and learning courses out there on Microsoft Learn website. My flows, you can see the flows that you've already created. In this particular case, you can see the ones I've created here. And it's by environment, so it'll only show the flows that are in this particular environment. So it's broken up into cloud flows, and these are the ones that are in the main Power Automate site. Desktop flows, those are the RPA flows that you might have created. And then if somebody has shared a flow with you, you can see it under this category here. And then, of course, you can also create a new flow from here. And see, if you click there, then you can see the various types. You can see it start from a template. You can use Visio to create templates. And if you have a so flows can be exported and imported as documents. Generally in a zip file is the way it gets exported. And then if you've got one that you've got a file, a file that has a flow in it, you can import it that way. So you just click on that, then you can import the solution there. All right, so process mining, I mentioned it just basically looks at your existing flows and recommends improvements. Desktop flow activity. So if you've got access to RPA, so again, RPA requires the premium license. It's not available. But you can actually in Windows 11 and even in Windows 10, you can install Power Automate and use it for free on your desktop. But in order to get real access or to access the real power of the RPA version of Power Automate, you really need to have the premium license. And you can have it connected to the cloud. So your on-prem RPA Power Automate can connect to your cloud flows, and they can pass data back and forth. You can use a cloud flow to trigger the running of a desktop flow, and various things. So they do have interactions between the two. You can group flows together into solutions. That's a more complicated topic that we won't talk about today, but if you have various solutions, you'll find them here. And for instance, there are a lot of features that are available in solutions that are not available in like a basic flow by itself. For instance, having one flow call another flow and pass data back and forth. That's something that you can't do up here. It's something you have to do in a solution. So if you find that you have a complicated workflow process and you want to break it up into multiple different flows, or being able to reuse flow components, reusability there, then you would have to group them into solutions. Approvals. So if you have approval workflows that you have access to, and you can, like I said, there is an app for iOS and Android. You can do approvals through that. You can do approvals through emails. So if an approval gets triggered, it'll either it can send notifications to that app, or it can send an email to your phone, or both. It'll do both actually. But if you can also respond to those approvals. So if you have a pending approval, you'll see it here, and you can click on it. Approve, deny, whatever it might be. So Power Automate makes use of Dataverse. The Dataverse is kind of an online or a cloud-based database, which can be tied to your Power Platform accounts. It's frequently used with Power Apps, which is what just popped up here when I clicked on it. This is where you actually would have to go into the Power Apps interface to make edits to your flows. But Power Automate also has access to that Dataverse data tables. And this is also something you can connect to, for instance, Dynamics installations if you're working with Dynamics. So if you are working with Dynamics, Dataverse should be fairly familiar to you already. Pop back over here. So if you need to, make edits to the table structure, it's basically a relational database that's hosted in the cloud. A fairly simple one, but it's got it there. So connections. So I mentioned Power Automate can connect to a bunch of different stuff. There are, I believe, something on the order of 1,400 connectors available now, and it just keeps adding more and more. Some of them are connectors that were created by Microsoft. Some of them are created by vendors. Others have been created by community members. So you can as a community member, if you see that there is a connector, a need for a connector, and it doesn't already exist, you can create it yourself and put it out there for the community to use. It has to go through like an approval process and whatnot, but there are many of the connectors nowadays are community submitted, and we'll show you that here in a little bit. But your existing connections, you can see the updates here. If you click on connections, you'll see the information about those. If there are issues, for instance, this one is broken right now at the moment, um, then you can come in here and you can fix them that way. So the most common issue with connectors is that a lot of connectors, they'll issue, you log into the connection and you'll use your credentials, and those credentials have an expiration. They don't automatically renew for certain connectors. So that's generally, if you find a connector is broken, most of the time it's because that those credentials have expired. And you can come in here and you can just click, most of the time you can just click fix connection and it'll re-sign you back in. Um, you may have to re-enter the credentials. It just depends on that external connector and the credentials, the way that they use credentials to connect to their system. Automation Center is something that's new and in preview. I'll skip over that for now. If you are using desktop automation, you will see information about the machines that are your RPA machines that are there. An AI Hub, if you have access to AI Builder, this is where you'll go to get access or to look at that kind of stuff. So AI Builder is kind of like an add-on for the premium license. It's included with the premium license. You get a certain number of credits with your premium license, but it's for simple stuff and for basic or for a small use cases, it works really well for that kind of stuff. If you have something where you need to have heavy use of AI, then I would suggest switching to Logic Apps and using that. But for basic stuff, AI Builder works really well with your flows. So some of the stuff it can do like OCR for reading text. It can recognize objects and images. You can do, and I have a couple of videos out there also on my channel that talk about AI Builder and some of the stuff that you can do with that. You can do prediction stuff, so it looks at a set of existing data and can make some basic predictions about what might be coming in the future. For instance, looking at sales data for the last 6 months and then predicting which of your clients will be most likely to buy in the next 6 months, kind of thing. It can translate languages. It can pull text out of images. So it's basically a lot of very basic introductory stuff that's AI focused or machine learning focused. So what it basically is, it's a simplified interface to Azure AI and the features that Azure AI can provide to you. So it's got some existing built-in models for various things, so that you don't have to do a lot of training yourself. It's also got GPT has just been added recently, so you can create flows that make use of Chat GPT. That's one of the newest parts of AI Builder. But like I say, it's a very basic introductory version of Azure AI is what it is essentially. And then more generally, if any menu items are hidden, you can see them there. Work queues is another thing that I won't go into today, but you can see most of the stuff. So if you want stuff to show up in your menu all the time, you can pin them there. So those are the various features there. So what I'm going to do now is kind of go back up here to create. And let's just create a basic flow. Let's just do an automated cloud flow. Just call this demo something. And what you'll do is a flow starts with a trigger of some sort. So, for an automated cloud flow, that trigger is going to be some event that happens in some external system. Maybe, like I say, a file is created. It may be a record gets added to a database. It may be an email arrives in your inbox. There are any number of things that can generate a trigger. And then AI Builder can use, or not AI Builder, Power Automate can use those connectors that it has to all those external systems. And if that connector provides the trigger that you need, then it can trigger a flow to run. In this particular case, let's just say, when an email is received. So let's look at email. Let's just say from our Outlook.com, so a personal email account here, when an email arrives. And click create. And what you can see here is there is it's a brand new interface. So uh, compared to, if you go back and look at my other introductory video, you'll see that the interface here has changed quite a bit. There's still, still basically the same, but there's a lot of new things to it. So for instance, when you click here to pull up the details of that particular event, in this particular case, the very first thing is the trigger at the very top. So you can do the settings and that. It used to be a lot more, you get this little box that would pop up to the right here and it'd be difficult to work with. This left menu that pops up now is far easier to use. So parameters. So, if you need to change some parameters or add parameters. So we'll say when an email comes in from say, comes in from my this particular account. Why didn't that show up? Back in there. Why is that not showing? I'm not sure why that's not showing up right now. You have to put it in as a custom value. Oh, that's right, because it's looking for accounts in the domain, which it's not tied to at the moment. So when you've got that, you have to put it in as a custom value. There we go. What you can have too, you can have multiple connectors. Oh, say I have 5 different Outlook.com accounts. You can set up 5 different connectors, and then you can select which one that you're going to use as part of that trigger. Settings. Most of the triggers and actions will have a settings bar. You can go in and change various things. Generally, you won't change too much in the settings. Sometimes, if you want to put in some kind of custom authentication or something like that, you can put something in there. For instance, I've got a couple blog posts to cover it, but for instance, you can trigger a flow by calling an HTTP endpoint. And then if you want to put some kind of custom authentication, say, okay, I'm looking for a particular value in the header in order to trigger this flow to actually run, instead of just responding to every input that comes in, then you can put that kind of thing here in the settings. Code view. So Power Automate flows are stored as JSON text, and every flow, when you export it and import it, it gets exported as a JSON file. It's multiple JSON files that sticks in a zip file, but same thing. But everything that you put in here, you can see the actual JSON that will get generated and get stored into the database, or get stored into the files. You cannot edit it from here. For instance, why that got the wrong value in there again? Weird. But regardless, you can't edit it though. So if I wanted to change it here, you can't edit it in read-only editor. Unfortunately, you cannot edit the JSON directly. All you can do is see what the output is. There's that. So that's creating that's my trigger and setting up parameters for the trigger. If I want to add an action, so everything after the trigger is an action. So in this particular case, I'm going to add an action. I'll say, okay, when an email comes in, let's see. Let's just put in a Teams message or channel. So let's post a message in the chatter channel. So in this particular case, you can put it, it can, host it as a Flowbot or as an agent or something, a specific user. Tell which channel I want to put it into. Put my team's channels here. Go one called demo time. And we're just going to put that into the general channel of this one. There we go. And then a message. So email has arrived from, and then with any flow or action where you've got these things where you can edit parameters, you can take values from, like environment variables, or you can take values that have come out of the previous steps in that flow. In this particular case, it's going to add, you can enter the data from previous step, or you can use formulas or what they call expressions, which are essentially formulas. You would call them in Excel. But it's the same type of thing. It's a function. You can write some kind of custom functions in here to manipulate things or to do things with the data from previous steps. In this particular case, we're just going to pull a value from a previous thing. So we're just going to click on that one. It'll pop up with a list of values from all your previous steps. We'll just say from. It'll take the from email address from my trigger and just drop it into this text message. So that's it. I mean, that's the basics of creating a flow. It's very simple, very quick and easy. And this is a flow, all by itself. So let's save that. And when you save it, it'll do an automatic check. If it's good, you'll see this ready to go kind of thing. Also, at any particular step along the way, you can do a manual check it. So, do that. In this particular case, I've got no errors or warnings. And then if you want to run a test, you would click test. And that lets you do a test of the flow. You can either do a test, manually. You can reuse triggered data from previous run. In this particular case, it's a new one, so there's no previous runs. I would click manually and then click test. And if I were to do that, then it would sit there and it would start running the flow, and it would sit there and wait until an email comes in to that account, and that would trigger the flow to run. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's what you would do to test it. So I mentioned Copilot. So you can do, there's a couple ways you can access Copilot. Generally, by default, it'll pop up here on the right. Or if it's not there, you can click that to make it appear and disappear. And let's just say I want to, let's see here. I want to add a step to send an email back to the original sender. So I want to reply to that email message. So I just type that in, telling Copilot what I want to do, and Copilot says, "Okay, I want to send an email back," and it went ahead and inserted that step here for me. If you don't like what it did, then you can undo it, or you can delete it manually. But you can see you can talk to Copilot, interact with it, and tell it the things that you want to do to create or to make changes to your flow. So, if you want to make changes and you're not quite sure what action you need or what trigger you need, what connector you need, you can, say, just describe it to Copilot. Say, okay, this is what I want to do. And Copilot will come back with suggestions. Say, how about this? How about this? There's a lot of great videos about how to do that. How to, ask, like with all AI, you have to ask the right questions to get the right answers sometimes. Although Copilot for Power Automate has improved vastly over the last few months, so it's very good generally at figuring out what it is that you're trying to accomplish and making the correct suggestions. It's not perfect, and it's far better than it was when it first came out, but it's constantly getting better, and it is pretty good now. And it's really, Power Automate is really focused on the citizen developer, the creator kind of person, somebody who's not a full-time developer. It's the business user who says, okay, I've got this Excel file that I have to go through it every single day and generate some calculations and send out these emails to these various people based on the data in my Excel spreadsheet, and I have to do this process manually. It takes me like 4 hours every day. Well, you can figure out how to use a flow to automatically read the rows in that database table, or not database table, in that Excel spreadsheet table, um, and then do something with each of those. So for each of those rows in that spreadsheet, I want to uh, run a calculation, come up with a certain set of values, and then send an email to the person in column J with the results of that. Um, you know, you can set up a flow to do that automatically for you, and just drop the file in OneDrive every day, and it'll automatically run based on that. Oh, excuse me. So that's kind of the power really of Power Automate is to take those everyday processes that we spend all this time on and make them very quick, very easy, very simple, and very automated. So that's one way. Some people don't like. There are still some bugs in the new designer, so it does have the option of taking you back to the old designer if you want to. But for the most part, I've found that it's pretty good shape now, so it works pretty well. Um, Another thing to remember with Power Automate is the moment that you save it and it saves successfully, that flow is active. So that's one of kind of the annoying things about Power Automate. I wish they would set it up so that it wasn't turned on by default. So you can see I've gone back here. It says, okay, it's turned on, and Trigger will send you a new email when you get, or will trigger when you send a new email to your inbox. You can see the status by default is on. If you want to turn it off, you can do that very easily. Turn that off there. When you look at my flows, back in here, so you can see the name, you can see who the owner is, you can see the runs of the history there, how often it's run in the last 28 days. It'll keep all of your history for 28 days and then it stops. It won't keep it any longer than that. So if you need logging beyond that, you'll have to come up with a way to export that information. And there's no way to change that. It's 28 days. That's it. You can see status. You can see when it was created, when it was last modified, the type of flow that it is. If flows can be set up to run under different plans. So this runs on the owner's plan. So basically it runs under my account in this environment. You can see the connections that are used with that. And if there are any issues with either of those, you'll see like a little error message or something over here. If there are any other owners, so you can share ownership of a flow. One of the things to remember about Power Automate and the flows that you create is that they are tied to your account. If you create a flow and 10 people are using that flow and they all like it, but it's always running under your account, and you leave the company and they delete your account, all of your flows go away. They're gone. So in those particular cases, you need to share ownership of those flows so that they don't go away when you leave the company. You don't want to leave people in the lurch when you leave. So always make sure that if you're going to share your flows, that you're also sharing the ownership of that, so that that doesn't happen. Process mining. So it if it sees suggestions that it can improve it, it'll do that. And if you, for instance, if you had anything that was tied to it, you'd see information there. But of course, I don't see anything there. So let's look at a flow that has been running here. So here's one that runs fairly regularly. So I've got this flow that monitors a blog and then posts a message to LinkedIn when a new blog post gets added to this blog. And this is actually the Power Automate blog that Microsoft runs. So you can see each time that trigger is run. So when a new article gets posted, so the last one was 2 days ago. You can see how long it took to run when it ran. You can see the status, whether it succeeded or failed. In this particular case, they've all succeeded. But if you want to see the details of a particular flow, so you can click on the date. And what it'll do is it'll open up, you can do this for any flow that you have. It will open up the flow in, kind of an editor view, but this is kind of like the output view. Um, so you can look at each of the steps. You see for each step, you'll see either a little green check mark if it was successful. You'll see a red exclamation if it failed. And then you can click on that to see the details. So particular case, here was the feed that was looking at. It's monitoring by publish date. Sometimes you'll see specific details. If it's a lot of data, then it will make it download it into a different file. In this particular case, you can see it's JSON data here. This was the output from the RSS feed. And then you can see I post a new post to my LinkedIn profile. It says, okay, here was a new article that came off the Power Automate blog. Here's a link to the article. Here was the title. I don't think I do anything else with that. But basically, you can see the details of each step as they ran, and what the inputs were, what the outputs were, if it did anything with it, that kind of thing. If you want this instance of the flow to run again, you can click resubmit, and basically it'll re-trigger that flow with this original data from the very beginning. So that's helpful for testing. If you've made edits to something, you want something to say, say I were to add, in addition to posting to LinkedIn, posting to some other social media, maybe my Facebook or something like that. Then if I add that step and then click resubmit, then it will run through that again with that additional step. And that's the thing to remember is it'll rerun everything from the beginning. So if it's already posted to my LinkedIn profile, if I were to resubmit this, it'll post it again to my LinkedIn profile. That's a good thing to remember when you're editing things. And then if you want to make edits, you can click there and it'll take you right into the editor for that flow. See that here? There's the editor view. Let's go back over here. All right. So go home. Right. So the templates. So if I want to create something from a template, let's say, when I get an email, I want it to save to OneDrive. So you click on the template, it'll bring up this screen here, and it'll say, okay, do I want to, you can get an overview of what the connections are going to be for that flow. And if you're fine with that, that's fine. You could create flow. One of the things you'll have to do though here is you'll have to create those connections to each thing. So in my particular case, I've already got those connections, so I don't need to recreate them. But again, if I have 5 different Outlook.com accounts tied to this, then I can switch between them here. Or if I have multiple OneDrive accounts, I could switch between them here. But that's where you'd set this up, and then you click create, and it would create that flow for you. It'd take you to the editor screen. It doesn't always do everything for you. Sometimes you'll have to, once you get into that editor screen, you'll have to create some or change some parameters, whatever it might be. But this is how easy it is to use a template. So if I click create, and in this particular case, because it didn't need anything else, it'll just create it there for you. I don't want that, so I'm going to turn that off. Yeah, and obviously, if it detects an issue with that, it'll bring that up. So, warning: this flow is turned off. Well, yeah, because I turned it off, which is kind of ridiculous. I know if I turned it off. If you want to share a flow with somebody else, you can do it here. If you want to save a copy of it, you would do that. So you could have multiple flows where you make some changes for each one. So maybe I want to do the same thing with all 5 of my email accounts. If I had 5, then I could do save as and just give it a new name and then just change the configuration of the Outlook and the OneDrive, or maybe I want all the files saved in the same place, whatever it might be. Delete it, you can delete there. If you want to send a copy to somebody, you can do that. And basically it'll export it and attach it to an email. You could do that. If you just want to export it here, then I would click that. So you could either do it as a package, you could just do it as a Logic Apps template. So you can export flows into Logic Apps. Basically, Flow and Logic Apps almost are almost identical. They use basically the same infrastructure. Just one of them is consumer focused, low volume focused. That's Power Automate, and the other one is business focused. All right, they're both business focused, but basically Power Automate is end user focused, business user focused, whereas Logic Apps is more developer focused, and it's a lot higher volume focused. So, if you've got something where you want to run, 20, 50, 100 rows in a spreadsheet, even, a couple thousand rows in a spreadsheet, Power Automate's fine. But if you're talking about 1 gigabyte worth of data, Power Automate is definitely not the tool to use. You need to go to Logic Apps for that. Um, so you can create your flow in Power Automate. Say, okay, I need this to be more heavy duty now. I need to make some things a little bit different for that. Then you can export to Logic Apps. Analytics, you can see stats for the flow itself. This hasn't run, so I won't see anything here. And I can turn it off or whatever it might be. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one for now because I do not want this. Oh, poof, it's gone. Takes you back to your front here. I'm also going to delete this one. So that shows you here. So if you want to edit it, you can do it here. If you want to share it, again, you can do it from this menu here. Or you got some more commands here, which are basically all the same commands you saw on the detail screen. Just, from the flow list here. We'll go ahead and delete that one, get rid of that. All right, so I've talked about, creating flows, showing you an example of that, talked about templates, talked about Copilot. Talk a little bit about connections. Go back down over here. Again, if you click here, you get your existing connections. You can see I've got a bunch of different stuff in here. If you want to add a new connection, do that here. And I say there are thousands, or I think it's like 1,400 connections that are possible out there. And you can search through here. Maybe I wanted to do Salesforce or something like that. And it'll bring up the Salesforce connector. You can see, well, you can search for it there. There we go. There's my Salesforce connector. So if you click on a particular connector, you can see what the triggers are that connector has available. So when a record is created, when a record is modified. So those are the two triggers that are available for Salesforce. And then it'll show you a list of a bunch of templates that are available for it here. If you want to see additional documentation, you can go and click on this button here. And this will take you out to the Learn website and the information for that particular connector. You can see whether Logic Apps, Power Automate, Power Apps, it basically shows you what the availability is in each of those regions. So you can see, it's available in Logic Apps, it's available in Power Automate, it's available in Power Apps. You'll see all that here. You'll see which license you need for each of those. So for instance, Logic Apps, there's really only one basic license for Logic Apps. You can see it's available throughout Logic Apps in all regions except for Department of Defense. Again, Power Automate, you need the premium license to use Salesforce, and it's available in all regions except, U.S. government, and cloud, DoD. So, basically provides you this information. Publisher information will tell you who created and maintains that connector. So in this particular case, Microsoft is maintaining it. And then you'll see a list of known issues and limitations. So it's very good. Obviously you want to familiarize yourself with that if you're planning on using the connector. This one has some pretty good documentation with it. Some of the various caveats and things like that. And also provide you information about the connector itself, how to create it. You can see throttling limits. So you can see this one is limited to 900 calls in every 60 seconds. And what constitutes a call depends on the connector really and how it works. So again, Power Automate is generally low volume. throttling limits here, sometimes it'll be broken out uh, uh, by the application. So you may see one set of throttling for Power Automate. You may see another set of throttling for Logic apps. In this particular case, it's looks like it's the same for both. In most cases, you'll see that as well. But that's just the throttling limits for the connector itself. It does not the throttling limits for the application. So keep that in mind as well. So there may be limits that the connector won't limit you, but the application will. So you saw we saw the triggers before. So here are the various actions. So excuse me. Here are the various things that that the Salesforce connector can do as part of the actions after the trigger. So you can close it, port a job, create a job. If certain connection or certain actions are deprecated, you'll see deprecated next to it. So in a lot of these, so for instance, like Outlook, you'll see V1, V2, V3 as they make changes and improvements to the connector. So like the V1 and V2 are deprecated. V3 is the current active one. Deprecated actions will sometimes still work, sometimes won't. It just depends on the connector and what's supported. But they're there for historical reasons. So for instance, here you can see this here update record deprecated. So a couple of different ones have been deprecated, and this is the current one. And then you can go down here, you can see details of each of those actions and triggers if the triggers are listed. Here you can just see the here you can see the detailed information about those actions. And then generally at the very bottom, you might see some additional information here. Really just some generic stuff down here at the bottom. But you can see here in the Learn documentation, you can see the huge list of connectors that are out there. Like I say, it's something like over 1,400 now as I record this. It's a very long list. And what you'll see most of the time, if it's community created, you'll see independent publisher next to it. So if I just click on one of these, so basically it means that basically it just means that it wasn't created by Microsoft and isn't maintained by Microsoft. It's maintained by the community, but it is available. And in this particular case, if it's a preview connection, it will mention its preview. It means that it may change radically. It may not change. Who knows? That's that information. That's how to get information on all the various connectors that are out there. Back over into here, go back to the home. So that's basically it as far as like an overview of Power Automate. Some of the newer things. One of the things I could do. So let's just take a quick peek here. An existing one. Let's get rid of that too. I don't want that. Let's go back into this one here and go back into the editor. I just want to show you really fast the difference between the new designer and the old designer. So let's turn off the designer. Yeah, let's not say. Oh, what? Going back to the new designer. There we go. So here's the old designer. You can see all this stuff was inline, pops up here to the right. I would click on that and the parameters would pop down here. Sometimes it would show you all the parameters. sometimes you see stuff that gets cut off, like here. So, chosen property we use to determine what? What? You don't know because it's got cut off. That kind of stuff happened all the time with the old designer. So I think the new designer, even with the few bugs that it still has, the new designer is far better, far superior. So like settings, I would click on that, it'll pop up inline here. So, okay, well, maybe there's something on that that you need to be able to see from the parameters in order to do setting over here, but you can't do that now. There's a lot of very irritating things about the old designer that I'm glad that they have gotten rid of that, or that it's going away. I mean, it's been updated with a new designer, which is, like I say, far better because now the stuff pops up over here, various things like that. So, that is it. So thank you for your time, and I hope you found this useful. I'm trying to get back onto a more regular schedule of creating content and creating more YouTube content. So I hope to see you stick around. Thank you.